Hey, y'all. Welcome to the last episode of Compliance Keepers for February. I am Betty Hovey with Compliant Healthcare Solutions, and I am once again, as always, joined by my colleague and friend and little partner on this venture here, Sonal Patel of SP Collaborative. Hey, Sonal.
Hey, Betty. Good morning to you. Yes, our last episode in the month of February. So, yeah, so excited for today's Compliance Capers, our final advisory opinion. And we're trying to leave it off on a good note, right? A favorable OIG advisory opinion. So, yeah, I'm excited to close the month out with some positive news, I guess, right? Yeah.
Yes, it's always good. You know, as we were talking before too, when we were thinking about doing this, that it doesn't have to all be you're going to go to jail and you're going to have to do this,
right,
and where it's always just gloom and doom. That you can talk about it from a practical standpoint and give good pointers of like how to avoid doing things or what things are okay, and sometimes we can have a little fun when we're talking about things. I think our last episode kind of showed that with us kind of derailing a few times on different subjects. But, that's what makes it interesting. I think to just listen to something like this in that dry here is what that's like the ice pick right in your forehead, so
we can do it, but I don't think our audience would be very pleased with our dry delivery.
No, I don't think we could do it though. I know I couldn't do it. I would try. I couldn't do it. No. I would end up going off, and it's like I'm doing something and it's like, oh, squirrel, so
that's right. Squirrel. Yep.
Or I think of something in my head as I'm saying something and I would be cracking myself up, which has happened quite often. But so today, as Sonal said, we want to end the month of love with giving a little love to these advisory opinions with looking at a favorable one. And this is advisory opinion number 23-02. So this was put out in February of 2023. And it is a favorable one that is put out by a drug company. So Sonal, kind of start us off with giving us a little bit of the particulars for this one, and then we'll dig into it.
Sure. So this particular, requestor, as the OIG calls them, right? They sent in their request for an advisory opinion. Perhaps they used that OIG template that we've talked about in previous episodes that you have the right to use to form your request for the opinion. So in this case, the opening of the advisory opinion states that they're writing in response to this company's request for an advisory opinion on behalf of this requestor, right, regarding their program to provide a drug for free for a limited time to patients who experience a delay in their insurance approval process for the drug. And that's called their overall arrangement, right? So specifically, they wanted to, ask for their findings on, is this free program going to be okay, right? And so at first glance, when I read this, I said, yay, bravo, like what a great concept, right? When patients, as we know, are required to go through a waiting period, right? A predetermination period. Is the insurance going to cover this? A prior authorization process, it might be called, or a predetermination process, right? So during that little bit of lag time, the patient can't receive a very necessary drug, right? To help them manage whatever their issues are. So when I read this, I thought this was a wonderful thing. I was like, okay, wow. This is great because it's for such a short period of time, right? Just for that slight delay, 2 weeks, as the advisory opinion goes through, is it going to be okay that we give the patients access to 2 weeks worth of this injectate, right, before they get insurance approval? So I thought those background details were remarkable, and I applaud the favorable OIG opinion in the end, right? As we go through today's conversation of the nuts and bolts and the finer details, in general, though, it's a bravo, it's a kudos to the OIG for saying in this one particular only OIG opinion for this one particular drug to this one particular requestor, it is something that is acceptable for the limited 2-week time period. So I thought it was fabulous when I read this. And I believe this was the very first OIG opinion that was released to their website in 2023. Because like you had mentioned, it was literally a year ago, pretty much to the day, from when our episode is going to air. So February 28th of 2023. So, it's really, really good news to end the month out with a favorable opinion. And again, it's for a very small population of patients as well. When you read the fine details of this advisory opinion, right? So it's low risk. And we didn't really talk about that in the previous episodes either, but each and every one of these OIG advisory opinions will talk about the higher level of risk when things are unfavorable, right? There's a higher level of risk to fraud, waste, and abuse happening, right? And in this particular case, it's going to be a very, 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 very scant, minimal, low risk to fraud, waste, and abuse, because the patient population that's affected that needs this particular drug, I believe they say is only like 49 patients across the USA in that certain year of 2021 that this particular drug company had disclosed that the patient population that requires this drug for their condition is so small. And the OIG agreed, like, yeah, this is pretty scant. So the chances of any type of risky business here are very, very small. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's this requestor was honing in on the civil monetary penalties. That was another thing. I think the other ones that we highlighted this month were anti-kickback and CMP. But this one was specific. They wanted to make sure that they wouldn't get in trouble for like inducement and things like that. So there wasn't really a kickback question with this one, but there was a civil monetary question, monetary penalties question. If you look at the factual background, as Sonal was saying, with the drug, it's an enzyme replacement therapy drug, or an ERT drug, that they acquired in November of 2020, which I think it's interesting, again, as we were talking, how they just really pull out all of that specific information. So they don't tell you which pharmaceutical company, they don't name the drug, they don't even name the condition it treats, because they're just trying to say it in this situation,
Right.
this is occurring. So I kind of like that. But it's the sole indication for the treatment of whatever this condition is.
Yeah.
It is an inherited genetic disorder that results in severely compromised immune systems, typically diagnosed within a few months of birth. So you're talking about, babies, and that's the other issue.
Yeah. Yes.
And I think that's where you're going to fall into that that waiting period for stuff, because sometimes, depending on when that baby gets diagnosed, they might not even be added to the insurance correctly yet.
Yeah.
And
True.
so I mean, you could very well run into those times when you're having that kind of gap in there. And so, especially if this is diagnosed in a baby, are you going to make the baby suffer for that period of time and not be getting the assistance they need? Well, of course not,
Yes. Right.
So it's something, again, within the first couple months of birth that they get diagnosed in, and it is fatal also if left untreated. So I think that was another important factor, once again, that this company is doing the right thing, saying we're not going to watch this baby die because they're waiting to get approval from the insurance company. We want to go ahead and, start them on the drug. Now, they did say that there is another treatment for this. The ERT was the only drug, and this company has the only drug that treats it, but patients could also get bone marrow transplants or BMTs. But if they're diagnosing these things at birth, there might be some other issues with getting bone marrow, and who do you get it from? So once again, if not treated, it's fatal. So I think you kind of have to, get moving on these things. They will be on the drug for the rest of their lives. So maybe, because I don't know what condition this is, so maybe later in their life, then they can get the bone marrow transplant and then not have to take the injection anymore. So maybe kind of, which would be good, because I'm sure, they would rather not have to do that. But there's the only company, the only drug, and it only comes from one pharmacy in the United States that, sends the drug out. So it gives all of that information in the factual background. So I think all of that stuff is really important to the story here, and why the OIG was just like, well, okay, there's no reason why, this would be something that we would think would be at a big risk for fraud. And your other thing, Sonal, when you were talking about that, they said there were only 6 to 15 new patients per year diagnosed with it. So extremely rare, which might be why we don't see a whole bunch of drugs to treat it. If it was something that half the population has, everybody would want to be making drugs for it. But you're talking about an extremely small, minute set of people that would get this. It is an FDA approved drug, though. So it did go through, and it's all well and good to be given to patients in the United States. But as of July of 2021, there were 49 patients in the US that were receiving a drug to treat that condition. 6 were Medicare, 32 were Medicaid. So that's 38 of the 49, which means that there are 11 commercial or uninsured. So the bulk of the patients were on Medicare or Medicaid, bulk of them being Medicaid, and that's probably because if it's diagnosed when they're an infant, it wouldn't be higher. It would be higher Medicaid than it would be Medicare at that point, And then the arrangement was, as you said, they wanted to give them the 14-day free supply while I was waiting to go into the insurance. And I think the other important point was under the, let's see which section, under the arrangement with, the conditions that they put on doing this then, that if they wanted to give a 14-day free supply while they were waiting, and then, sometimes insurance companies aren't always good, and especially state Medicaid agencies, sometimes they're backed up and they might not be able to get to something within that 14-day period. So they did say that they were also wanted to be able to give a one-time extension. And I don't know if it was another 14 days to make it a total of 28 days, but only if they hadn't got the approval yet. So if it had come in, then they were done. They weren't getting anything else for free. It wasn't like, we'll just keep giving it to you that way. If they have the favorable coverage decision within 48 hours of receiving the information, then they wouldn't be eligible for the free supply. So it's not just they were like free drugs for everybody. They had it set up to where it was conditional upon them having to wait for approval. So I think the way that they set it up is done in the right manner to start off with, which is probably half the battle, right? When you get ideas to do things, it's this, okay, how do we roll this out compliantly, instead of just willy-nilly, everybody that wants it gets it, or, whatever the case may be with that.
I completely agree. It was a well thought out plan. Completely agreed.
And then they also had a thing in there about the physicians, right? About the physician and how the patient would get probably that first dose. And again, I'm not finding.
Right. They recommended that because, again, the patient population is so small, right? They are tiny little things. So they recommend that the provider is going to go ahead and provide the injectate material in the hospital setting. However, they are not going to be able to be reimbursed for any type of administration code in the hospital, right? So that's only done one time by the physician. Again, they can administer the, life-saving material one time in the hospital. But most importantly, again, this company really thought everything through. They expect the provider to educate the little things care team, right? Their parent, their guardian, whoever will have instruction on how to self-administer this drug at home eventually once the kid gets to come home. So I thought the entire plan, you're absolutely right, was really, really well thought out in terms of how everything was, typed up on the OIG template, etc. How the OIG team received this really well thought out, well laid out. Every single question was properly addressed, in my opinion, right? They literally thought of everything, that the provider is only going to administer this drug one time in the hospital before the child leaves, right? And their care team will be well aware of how to provide the injectate on their own as soon as they are discharged. So I thought everything was really, really planned out very, very nicely. And I like to see the empathy and compassion come in again from the OIG team, right? Because as we told you all, it's a baby, right? They are still in the hospital and it's very few of them. But if they don't receive this very unique treatment for their very unique conditions, these little patients will expire, So I really liked seeing the good opinion outcome at the end, and the OIG and their team definitely showed the empathy and compassion as similar to what the company, the requestor did as they were asking for this, free drug for a 2-week period and only 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So
And
kudos to
conditionally,
OIG.
like you said, if they got the approval right away, then they didn't give them the free drug.
Then
So
they don't get the free drug,
yeah.
right? Because the insurance actually worked timely, right? So they got the approval. So they understood that then their free criteria would drop off. It would not be needed
Right.
because the patient's insurance has kicked in. So yeah, I thought it was really, really well done.
And like we said too earlier, when they were talking about the civil monetary penalties issue, in this advisory opinion, if you look at the second section under the legal analysis, the reason why they wanted to look at this stuff was because it states here on page 4, if y'all pull this up or go look at it, on the last paragraph, that the penalties that they could face if they were doing something would be $100,000, imprisonment for 10 years, or both, plus exclusion from the Medicare program or Medicaid program, any federal program. So the stakes are, big if they were doing something that was a no-no,
That's huge. That's huge, Betty. So right there, on the bottom of page 4, loud and clear, right? They state what could happen to you, if this was a different scenario, right? They laid out, and those are some pretty serious details. $100,000, imprisonment up to 10 years, or both.
Yeah, the penalties are bad enough, and nobody wants to go to prison, at least I don't think. But to me, the exclusion from the federal programs, that's kind of like the nail in the coffin, with these kind of
Yeah.
issues, if you get into that bad side,
Mhm.
think about your patient base. Could you
Yeah.
afford in your
Mhm.
practice not
Mhm.
to be able to see federal program patients, Medicare,
Right.
Medicaid? Could you just erase them all out of your practice and still be viable?
Right.
Depending on your practice, for a lot of practices, the answer is no. That
Yeah.
would just put them out of business. So even if they didn't have to go to jail, if they said,
Mhm.
well, you're excluded, that's kind of, well, we might as well just close the practice then.
Yeah. Yeah.
That to me is like the bigger,
Mhm.
that's the bigger issue, when you hit into that area where you could be excluded. That's the killer.
Yikes.
Yeah.
That's well said. Yeah. People really have to think things through. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, can you take it? Can you take no Medicare patients, no Medicaid patients? Don't know. Right. Practices really need to think about those greater ramifications. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. And then to be excluded, like you're done. Um, yeah, that's not a good look. Not a good look at all.
No, no. They're
Wow.
putting you out on the ice raft into the
Yes.
cold water and
Yes.
pushing you away.
Year out. Who was that lady on the Titanic? Who's that actress swimming on that door? And it was just her. She's just out there in the ocean, whatever that movie was.
Poor Jack, that poor guy.
Yeah,
It's like there was
yeah.
room for him on that door. Come on.
There was plenty of room for both of them on that door. I agree. I agree.
But anyway, and that, we were talking about movies the other day, by the way, and I've never seen that movie. So people
Well,
didn't,
we are not rom-com buffs,
no,
as we
no,
said off
no.
air. We
Yeah,
like action and horror and
yeah,
mystery
yeah,
and legal stuff,
yeah.
and we don't do the rom-com. So that could be why.
I will tell you, I did watch part of it. I watched the part where it was
Mhm.
sinking. That I thought was cool, but
That's why we know about the door. Exactly. We only know about the door. Okay, we digress again. We're so sorry, audience. Oh my gosh. We hit a squirrel.
I
Okay,
know,
okay.
okay.
Let me get
So,
back to
um,
their rationale. They
yeah,
list off
their
4
analysis.
points. Yeah, they list off 4 really great points, as to why the arrangement, okay, so nevertheless, for the following reasons, we find the arrangement to be sufficiently low risk under the federal anti-kickback statute, right? So, like I think I stated earlier, in this case, low risk, right? And they will clearly state that in your advisory opinion, right? From last week's was very high because it was unfavorable. So, although we did not talk about that in last week's session, the document itself, the advisory opinion, does state it's at high risk for fraud, waste, and abuse, which is why they also pushed it to unfavorable. Okay, so in this case, it's at low risk. So, first, it's unlikely that the arrangement will lead to the overutilization of the drug, right? And obviously, as I've stated again and again, it's a very small patient population here. So, how are they going to overuse it, right? It's only like 50 patients who've had to use it since 2021. So, very, very small. So, I applaud that remark that they made. And then it states, second, the arrangement is distinguishable from problematic seeding programs in which a manufacturer might offer a drug for free or at a greatly reduced cost to induce a patient onto that drug so that the patient will obtain subsequent supplies that would be billed to federal healthcare programs. Because the arrangement is available only in the event of a delay in the insurance coverage determination process, patients and prescribers likely assume at the time the drug is prescribed that the patient's insurance will kick in, right, and cover the drug, and that the patient will be subject to applicable cost sharing amounts. So that's also key. So as soon as that insurance kicks in, the patient and the family is going to be expected to cover the cost sharing. So, the OIG advisory opinion here really outlines the nitty gritty and those details and their rationale, right? They move on to their third. Third, the prescriber receives no financial benefit under the arrangement. The self administered drug, again, like I said, the patient's care team is going to do it on their own. The self-administered drug is dispensed directly to the patient from the specialty pharmacy. Therefore, prescribers have no opportunity to bill for the drug. So that's spot on, right? So there's no risk there. And then fourth, the arrangement entails no cost, zero cost to the federal healthcare programs, right? No patient, pharmacy, payor, or other third party is billed for the free supplies of the drug or for the administration of the drug, right? So nothing is going to the federal government payers. So the OIG, did a great job in this advisory, 8 pages, right? They lay it all out as to why this is a thumbs up and this is okay to do. And again, I stress that their team showed the compassion rightly and the empathy for these little patients that really, really do require this life-saving injectate that only this company makes. It's just the one specialty pharmacy. That's it. They can't get it from anywhere else. They also say that again and again.
Yes.
In their requestor application that they sent in, right? They disclosed and certified to all of those facts that they are the only, one that makes this life-saving injectate.
Yeah.
So
it brings, when you were talking about the fourth point, about the no patient, pharmacy, payor, third parties billing for the free supplies, it brought the thought to me for people out there that maybe, of course, not be involved in this particular kind of like only one in the country thing doing it, is like the Vaccine for Kids program. And any other time you get drugs from like a drug company that comes in and gives you ones to give patients on trial basis to see if they need it, you can't charge patients for that. You can't charge the insurance for that. You got it for free. You must give it for free. There were so many practices that I have been in where they are wanting to report the vaccines to the insurance payor. And I'm like, did you pay for it? Well, no. Okay. Well, then you can't bill for it. So anything that you're bringing in and getting, like the Vaccine for Kids program, or any other thing like that you are being given at no cost to you, is not something that you should then turn around and try to bill a payor for.
Right. Exactly. That's well said. That's good reinforcement for our providers out there. That's well said. If you're not incurring any cost on that drug, then you cannot turn around and bill it out to the federal payers, commercial payers, anybody. You shouldn't be doing that if you're not yourself incurring any cost. That's well said.
Thank you. And in their conclusion then, they say that, based on those facts, in your request for the advisory opinion and supplemental submissions. So they must have had to, give a little extra information to them maybe. Because remember, back in that first time we talked about it, you can give additional information to add to it if you need to. But it said, although the arrangement does generate prohibitive
remuneration,
under the federal anti-kickback statute, if the requisite intent were present, the OIG is not going to would never impose administrative sanctions on the requestor in connection with this arrangement under, the sections of the Act, as those relate to the commission of acts described in the anti-kickback statute, and it doesn't generate prohibitive
remuneration
under the beneficiary inducement civil monetary penalties. See, that's why we need to do this together. We can
exactly. You're like, your turn. Cue. Cue
the R word.
Cue. Hilarious.
That's so yeah. And see again, my brain it's the squirrel thing again. When I could never say the plural word for desk when I was little. I could not say it.
For what?
Desk. You
can't say desks?
I couldn't when I was a kid.
You couldn't when you were a kid. Oh, well, I can't say, okay, here's my word. I'm going to say this on air for the world to hear. I cannot say, okay, like a hair perm, but the word is longer. So I can say perm, but what's
Permanent?
the long? Yeah, I can't say that word.
Really?
I can just say perm,
Huh. Okay.
which is
So
only
anytime we talk
applicable
about
to,
that,
yeah, I can't say per. Yeah, see, I just stop right there, per.
but if you're talking about something being temporary or permanent,
Exactly. I can't say the word.
or you can't
I
say it
just can't
either.
say it. I
Never.
can't say it. I can't say it. I just go perm.
Well,
Yeah.
at least perm is good
I
and
can't like
acceptable.
extend it. Like my mouth won't extend it. I can see it in my brain. I can write it on paper, but my mouth doesn't say the word. Perm.
Well,
Perm.
perm works, so that's good. So yes. So we were talking about a permanent advisory opinion today. The OIG.
Thank you.
And like we wanted to end on this nice, favorable one. So that they are good to go with what they were doing. And that
Yes.
wraps up our month of talking about advisory opinions. So once again, if y'all want to look at where the advisory opinions are, we've shown this a couple times in the various episodes we've done, but this is where you can go on the oig.hhs.gov site and take a look at all the advisory opinions that are out there and see if anything kind of, fits what you're doing or what you're thinking of doing or anything like that, just to kind of check on the practice and make sure everything is, on that favorable side, right? Or if you see anything unfavorable, then we need to talk to somebody to try to get that fixed. But this has been a really, I think, a good series for this month on the advisory opinions. And are we next month going to work plan OIG work plan projects?
We are going to have an entire month of talking about the OIG work plan for the month of March. So, I hope everybody in our audience has really embraced, like we have done, these advisory opinions. Hopefully you guys will take these advisory opinions and drop them into your toolboxes like we do. We think they're remarkable. Hopefully you guys will really appreciate this entire month that we have disclosed the various favorable and unfavorable opinions that we've shared from the OIG website that they produced in 2023 and a couple already in 2024, right? So let us know in the comments, etc. Follow us on our YouTube channels. Make sure you hit replay and watch these things from time to time, because we do think we've tried our very best to impart a lot of wisdom, our own analyses on these documents. And we just think they're really, really great things. And like we said, for next month, the month of March, hopefully you guys will really like what we have in store for you for the OIG work plan. We'll try and provide things a little bit differently than you're used to seeing. Hopefully you're all addressing and using the OIG work plan. But we'll try and do our own spin on what they do and try and provide you our educational thoughts and findings from their disclosures on the work that they do from month to month. So we can't wait. So it's going to be good.
Well, thanks everybody, and we will see you for March as we continue on our compliance capers on Fridays at 10 a.m. Central, 11 Eastern, and you can figure out all the other time zones on your own, I'm sure, when you click to attend, it'll tell you.
That's right. That's
thanks,
right.
y'all, and have a good afternoon and good weekend.
Thanks so much. See you next time.